To celebrate Women's History Month, the Women of Ondeck Affinity Group wanted to gather together to celebrate the fearless women who compose Ondeck. These are women who throughout their tenure have impacted Ondeck as a business and as a community. These are women who fearlessly advocate for themselves, Ondeck, and our customers. As women across the world fight for equality, along with countless other groups, we are joined by male allies like the ones we have on our panel today. These are men whose advocacy and sponsorship of women are key at Ondeck and throughout the business landscape. We will introduce our panelists throughout the conversation, but want to thank them for their time today and their fearless commitment to women's equality every day. My name is Camille Adamson, and I will be today's moderator. I've been at Ondeck for almost 2 years in our people operations team as the compensation manager. I'm excited to introduce our panelists and share more about them throughout the panel. Maria Grisales, Senior Account Manager at ODL, Stacy Gartner, Senior Director, Project Management with Ondeck Canada, Liz Wu, Manager of Risk and Analytics at ODX, Rob Young, President of International, and Scott O'Brien, Tech Lead Customer Management at ODL. We will break up today's panel into 2 different parts. We will begin by asking questions of our panelists for the first 35 to 40 minutes of the conversation. Then we will move to Q&A from our audience. We will utilize the chat box feature to ask questions in WebEx. Reminder, you were muted on entry, and we will ask our panelists to unmute themselves to speak and ask that our audience remain muted throughout the conversation. First, we'd like to hear from Maria Grisales about navigating business challenges. This is something that the Women of Ondeck Affinity Group aims to help our team members with. Maria is a Senior Account Manager in Sales Renewals. She has been at Ondeck for 5 years, and previous roles included Lending Advisor in Direct Sales. Maria is inspired by Barbara Corcoran, founder of the Corcoran Group, a real estate brokerage firm, and Shark on ABC's Shark Tank. Barbara's advice on handling failure resonated with Maria. By approaching failure as a learning opportunity, it's helped her become more resilient throughout her career. Maria, what is some of the advice you'd share with young women entering a male-dominated profession?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. First of all, it is an honor to be here. And so my advice that I will give is that the stereotype of a salesperson is one that is pushy, that is aggressive, extroverted, motivated by money, and a field that is a majority male. And historically, people have equated being aggressive to effectiveness. And in my case, I have had a successful 5 years career in sales at Ondeck, and I don't consider myself like that at all. I'm definitely not a man, and I am a massive introvert. So if you ask most of my colleagues, they may tell you that I am totally the opposite of those stereotypes. So everybody has their own unique styles. My advice will be to know yourself well, to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and to develop on those strengths. So for example, in my case, being empathetic and kind with my clients comes naturally for me. So these are my strengths. So what I do is I focus on working hard on building a strong connection with my clients. And when I have a point of view, I will offer it with kindness and respect. So that will be my advice, is focus on your strengths and forget about your weaknesses.
Okay, thank you, Maria. That's really great advice. Now we'd like to turn to Stacy Gartner. Stacy Gartner, Ondeck Canada's Senior Director of Management, is joining us from Montreal. Between Evelocity and Ondeck Canada, Stacy has been here for 7 years and 5 months. Stacy is inspired by her grandmother, Lisa Gartner, who turned 100 in December. She embraces life with wit, humor, and grace. She worked as a bookkeeper before marrying Stacy's grandfather and has raised 3 boys. Stacy wanted to share a story from just last week. Her grandmother was pretty down given COVID-19, as she is being asked to stay in her apartment within her senior residence for her own protection. She said, "I was pretty down in the dumps yesterday, Stacy, so I spoke to a smart person, myself, who reminded me that I need to focus on the positives." Stacy, what improvements have you seen for women in the workplace in the past several years? And how can we further these changes or take advantage of them to push us even further?
Thanks, Camille. Just checking in that you can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks so much for that great introduction and for those kind words. And for plugging my grandmother. So I just want to say before I begin that I echo Maria's sentiment in thanking you all for providing this opportunity and for celebrating women and on deck. It really is an honor, and I was grateful to be asked. So in order to address the question about what improvements we've seen for women in the workplace over the past several years, and how can we take advantage of changes to push them even further. I would say that, in my experience with Ondeck and Velocity over the past 7+ years, more women are around the table, and providing the opportunity to allow for that amongst our management is really, it furthers the environment in order to foster that type of growth of women in our corporate culture. In particular, Ondeck Canada has a strong female presence that's ever growing. We're about 40% overall, and within management, particularly 32% of us are female as well. Our founders of our organization, amongst the 2 of them, they have 6 daughters at home, and they are avid advocates for women in business. Both their spouses are working women, and they truly appreciate all the work and heart that goes into everything that we do for the organization. In particular, Ondeck Canada, I'll talk a little bit internally and then externally. So Ondeck Canada is very supportive of our female colleagues. They provide, flex hours and remote opportunities. It's exceptional how quickly we were up and running if we compare ourselves to, whether it's competitors or other industries during this remote work environment, but really allowing for us to be able to be connected while we may not be in the office. We are also very welcoming of allowing for our families to come to the office. A colleague of mine, a male colleague of mine, reminded me of how, we are very comfortable with bringing our kids in if they're, let's say, off from school, they have a pedagogical day, and they need to be home. And if you don't have childcare at home and you need to come into work, the company is extremely supportive of allowing for that. We have games around the office. If we're in meetings, there's always a smiling face, be it female or male, to entertain our young ones so that we can just get the job done. So being supportive of us in doing so is extremely appreciated and necessary for us who have families at home. I think, externally, especially in tech, we need to be more cognizant of including women in this environment. We are seeing more women in our industry, and we need to encourage training and development as well. I know internally we have a number of women who have been able to spread their wings in areas that are not their specialty, and giving them opportunities to grow in their roles or move into other roles is something that the company allows us to do and encourages us to do. We have training initiatives that we encourage our employees to take advantage of as well. And then sort of on a final note, in terms of community outreach and supporting women outside of Ondeck, we're very proud of an initiative called Women's Founders Fund, which one of our founders, David Swade, is on the panel. And essentially, it's a fund where we support female entrepreneurs in their kind of first years of business in order to foster growth of women's presence in our economy. So that's something that we're quite proud of as well.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to turn to Rob Young. Rob is the president of International and has been at Ondeck for 5 years. Rob, what are some of the personal experiences or reasons that have influenced your thinking around gender in the workplace and have motivated you to be an ally? Rob, you may be on mute.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was doing my usual WebExing, which is dialing into the phone as well as on the video, just to make sure I had a good connection. But obviously, I messed it up. Thanks. So thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, and you know, really glad to be invited to this. I'm not sure if I'm how qualified I am to act as a. Hear me okay?
Probably have two mics.
Two mics. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Is that better now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. You would think after 5 years working from home, I would have sorted this stuff out, you know, and now you all guys are becoming WebEx experts much faster than I've ever figured this out. So there we go. Thanks, Camille. So yeah, I think your question was, what are some of the like personal reasons or experiences around kind of what's motivated me to be an ally? I mean, first of all, I'd say, you know, I'm not sure I qualify as that, but thank you very much for considering me in that way. I think, you know, my perspective is just, I think it's just my background growing up. And I suppose most of my life, I seem to somehow, luckily, have been surrounded by women in some way, shape, or fashion. So to me, it just comes very, very, you know, as normal. I grew up in Spain, and for those of you who have visited Spain, in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, it's an incredibly nearly matriarchal society. It's a very family-orientated society. And I think what's nice about that is that women are celebrated not in what you would think the traditional role of being at home or the center of the home, but more the center of the family. You know, kind of growing up, I saw that with all my friends from school, all their families. And so that just, you know, really made me feel, you know, very much at ease in that sense. I grew up, I have one sister, so I have no male siblings. You know, we were together as best buddies all of our youth as we grew up. I then went to college and university, and I studied languages. And so, I don't know, 80% of my class were all women, again, for some lucky reason. And then I've been lucky in my work life to work with a lot of women as well. I suppose I ended up in financial services, and as Stacey has just said, you know, I think women are increasingly taking a bigger and bigger percentage of the workforce there. So again, have had lots of very good experiences working both with women with women in my team, and then also reporting to women, which you know, I think is something I highly recommend for a lot of males to you know, avail of that opportunity if possible, because it's a great experience. So I think it's just that background of being you know, my upbringing and all of that, which has just meant hopefully I can consider myself to be an ally and to help in that sense.
Thanks for sharing your story, Rob. So this brings us to an important topic of allyship and advocacy. We will be focusing on advocacy of women and hope this discussion will bring light on how you can be an advocate to all. Now, turning to Liz Wu. Liz has been
muted again.
Hey, Camille, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay.
You're back.
Thanks for sharing your story, Rob. This brings us to an important topic of allyship and advocacy. We'll be focusing on advocacy of women and hope this discussion will bring to light how you can be an advocate to all. Now, turning to Liz Wu. Liz has been at Ondeck for over 3 years, serving as a credit strategist and senior risk analyst prior to beginning her role as manager of risk and analytics. Prior to working on the ODX team in Virginia, she was on the ODX team in New York.
Unmute again.
Okay. Liz, what are some of the ways you have benefited from or worked with male advocates in advancing your career?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Camille. Speaking of the benefits, I'll say there are direct benefits and there are indirect benefits. So for the direct ones, since I started from the risk team of Ondeck, throughout my life in the risk team, most of the time the team was male dominated. In that way, I usually turn to my male colleagues or seniors for technical questions or for brainstorming, and I truly learn a lot from that. And speaking of indirect benefits or help, I would say when I just joined Ondeck, I was pretty quiet in the meetings and team discussions. One reason is that at that time I was quite inexperienced and I was not fully sure that I could follow everything in those meetings. And I wasn't confident to ask a question because I'm not sure if the question is a good question. And another reason is, like, by personality, I tend to keep silent until I'm 100% sure that my idea is well thought. I think my manager, who's also male, realized this. So as a result, sometimes he just call my name during those internal meetings, ask politely for my comments or check some easy numbers with me to make my voice heard. He also recommend me to talk to people from other teams just casually to build the confidence. And he also recommend me to present the entire team's work to senior management. And he helped me to cover those difficult questions. Through all those indirect help and practice opportunities, I actually built lots of confidence by presenting to a great group of audience. And by throughout these opportunities, I gradually become very confident about making my voice heard. So I would say these are the benefits I get from them.
Thanks, Liz. As a follow-up, can you talk a little bit about a time that you had support of male advocates and what kind of difference it made?
Yeah, I would say that the stories I shared just previously are just are the supports from them. And besides that, I would say in a male-dominated world, especially in risk and technology, sometimes the recognitions from male colleagues or seniors means a lot to the females. It's like building the confidence for you, like letting you know that you can also do well in this kind of sectors or industries.
Good. Thank you so much, Liz. I'd like to turn to Scott O'Brien, one of our allies on the panel. Scott joined Ondeck 1 year ago as a tech lead on the customer management value stream in technology. Scott is inspired by his late wife, Carol, because she touched so many people's lives and made him who he is today. Scott, what has helped you be a more effective advocate?
Thanks for letting me speak at this panel. It really is an honor. It's not something that, I would consider myself a good advocate, but I do like to try to make sure that I can be an advocate for equality and diversity, especially for women. To kind of answer that question, I want to go a little bit kind of into my journey. I was raised by a single mother, one of the strongest people I knew. Went up through, I was always into tech and those sorts of things, but it was primarily men that were kind of into that stuff. I was actually kind of an outcast throughout school and those sorts of things. And when I finally did get into the industry, for pretty much the first 15 years that I worked in computers, I could probably count the number of women I worked with directly on one hand. Okay, not a lot of women were really in that workplace. And, much like everything else, I always considered myself to be somebody who was, strongly supportive of women in the workplace. And I really tried to maintain relationships with the women that I worked with to make sure that they were, listened to and those sorts of things. But I was still sharing kind of the male perspective, my experience, my perspectives in the workplace, and the whole industry was really geared toward, a very specific set of behaviors and stuff. Much like, the sales thing of you have the really outgoing and outspoken kind of aggressive behavior, and the computer industry was very similar to that as well. I didn't really start looking into how to be a better advocate until I actually became a people manager, and I had a woman who worked for me. And I would say that wasn't exactly a positive experience because I didn't learn to listen. I had really tried to put her into a spot where she could eventually become my peer. We were trying to grow her into a role that was basically equivalent to mine. But I had put her out, I guess, on a limb or on a thing that really she didn't feel comfortable with. And then she didn't feel like I had supported her in that role. And a lot of that really was from the fact that I didn't understand the perspective that she came from. I didn't have some of that shared history. And I didn't really learn to listen. So the thing that's really made me become, I think, a better advocate is really the ability to learn to listen to people's experiences, be very conscious of what they've gone through in their lives, because it's only by then that you can really help coach people and you can really help bring them up with you and to have them feel like they're understood and that you are advocating for them.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for sharing how you become a more effective advocate. To continue this discussion, I was hoping to hear a little bit more from Liz and Rob. What advice do you have for those who want to be male advocates and aren't sure how to start? Liz, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Actually, to add on, I totally agree with Scott's point. Listen is very important. And my suggestion will be to start with, for those who want to become male advocates, you can start from listen to women's stories. Like I talk to my husband about my daily life at Ondeck almost every day, regardless whether he wants to listen or not. Just by listening to those stories, you will get a general idea of like the challenges that women may face in the workplace that you may not realize. And also in general, being more understanding of the challenges that women face and also try to be more inclusive in those like daily activities or events. All those will be very helpful to start with.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. Rob, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, look, I agree. I think it's really weird. I had written down the same word, listen. And I think it's just a theme. I've heard it in fact, I've heard it in the last 2 months from 2 different females at Ondeck in positions of relative responsibility, say to me, hey, Rob, I'm just not listened to. That's the issue I have here. And I think it's a problem. It's a little bit of a problem to an extent for Ondeck. It's just it's a wider one as well in a situation where it's mostly male, dominated in terms of the senior roles or the decision making roles. And I think it's and I think it's not the message or obviously the quality of the message or the logic of the message, it's how it's delivered that for some reason or another, males are not very well attuned to be able to take it on board. And that's, I think I find is a lot of the issue for some reason. So, my advice to any male considering taking up, this kind of role and advocating is exactly listening, and is understanding that to me anyway seems to be where a lot of the barrier is, because for whatever reason, as males, we have difficulty listening to women, what they're saying, and not receiving the message because we're used to receiving it in a different way, whether it's the loudest voice or the most, data driven or statistically driven. And, we don't allow for what I find anyway from women. I get a much wider point of view or argument that looks at a much wider dimension of things than what I typically get from a male colleague who just goes straight to a particular point. And for whatever reason, we seem to be set up to accept those messages more so. Again, at Ondeck, I've seen it at other industries and other places as well. So I kind of concur a little bit with Liz and Scott. That's the secret sauce, I think, and what I would encourage.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. So I want to pivot over to In It Ondeck. I'm hope you all have heard of this, one of the Ondeck's U.S. company goals for 2020, focused around diversity and inclusion. It's an important goal and one that we are excited to talk about with our panelists. I'd like to start with Maria. As a Hispanic woman, how have you used your diverse perspectives to help Ondeck?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I actually love this question, by the way. So as an immigrant to this country where English is not my first language, I have always encouraged leadership at Ondeck to provide tools and services in our languages, especially in Spanish. I am passionate about this market, not only because I am Latina, it is my community, but also because I know they represent a significant opportunity for our company, And just to give you some facts about that, is that the Hispanic community in the US is the fastest growing segment in the country. There are more Hispanics in the US than Canadians in the world. And Hispanics are starting new businesses at a higher rate than the general population in the US. So this is clearly a big opportunity for us as a lender to increase our market share while positively impacting this community, as well as the US economy. That is actually that we need to focus right now. And we as a company, as you said, we acknowledge the importance of diversity and inclusion within our organization. So we should have the same passion about our customers. So to go back to your question, I have worked cross-functionally with other departments like marketing, revenue, product. They have been great, and they have been helping me on this project. For example, we have established dedicated Spanish teams in customer service, payment support, in sales, and we have translated also some documents for certain customers that don't know, that don't speak English. And hopefully in the future, we will marketing campaigns dedicated to this community.
Thanks, Maria.
Yeah. Thank you.
So diversity is so important to an organization. Diverse teams lead to more creativity, innovation, employee engagement, and increased profits. Perspectives like Maria and many others are critical. So how should we be thinking about this? My question is for Stacy and Scott. So I hope our audience, if you have a question for Q&A, please start thinking about it. We'll be asking you for them shortly. Scott and Stacy, I'll start with you. What strategies do you think are critical for developing innovative, diverse teams? And what successes have you or your organization had thus far?
So this is, can everybody hear me? Okay, great, thank you. So this is a great question, something that we're actively working on during recruiting and as part of our culture. So Montreal and Quebec in particular, I mean, we know Canada is a melting pot. We encourage immigration in a number of areas. And as we recruit, specifically women in tech, our presence at conferences such as Hacker Women, we're at, we take advantage of a number of initiatives that the government provides, such as something called International Montréal, where we bring in missions from various countries, such as France and Colombia, to bring in talent that fills certain gaps or needs in the marketplace. So we enrich our culture that way, not just our community's culture, but the culture here at Ondeck. And then, you know, that's sort of reaching out externally. In terms of the internal work that we do, we have a number of colleagues who have taken the opportunity to represent, similar to the affiliate groups. So we have a team of individuals as part of our health and wellness group that have various initiatives that support, whether it's you know, cultural potluck meals or different types of sports events, you know, breaks where people can come together and watch the FIFA World Cup together and you know, share their colors from the various backgrounds that they have. You know, we need to have the will and desire in order to support diversity, to foster inclusion, to foster innovation, be it with women and our male allies and counterparts. But you know, in order to have a workplace that everyone feels welcomed and supported.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Scott?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Stacy says, especially from the recruiting side. You know, I think it was last year, right after I joined, there was a Women at Ondeck conference where they had an executive talking about kind of the onlys in a particular team or whatnot. And one of the things that kind of really spoke to me, because you know, I've never really been an only in a group, and I was imagining myself kind of in that situation, wondering, how much more careful would I be versus how much, willing am I to take a risk if I felt like I was the only one and everybody's eyes were on me. So recruiting at women hack events or those sorts of things, I think is really big. The affinity groups are really big for kind of getting people to where they feel like they have something in common. So rather than looking at differences, we can look at similarities that we might share with others. That helps people feel equal or feel like they're not alone. Honestly, equality needs to be part of the conversation. I make sure whenever I'm talking to every member of my team that equality is something we expect. I make sure that if there's any concerns from the women on my team, that they have an avenue where they can talk to me about anything that they feel comes to mind. And just because that may not be part of my shared experience, it's not something that I ignore. I take those as being important things, and really look into them and try to make sure that they understand that that's very important in our group, and that they should feel safe to go out and be risky at times or make mistakes or those sorts of things. You watch for people who aren't participating and try to include them, because a lot of this comes from self-confidence. And one of the ways to gain the self-confidence is really feeling like you're able to have a voice and have people respond positively to that. And one-on-ones are a very big tool that I use as well. People can, a lot of times, things that they may not feel like they can say in front of a team, they are able to say, hopefully in a one-on-one. So, I keep an open door, and I do regular one-on-ones with my team to make sure that they feel like they're included, and that I'm listening to them, and that I continue to be an advocate for them.
Okay. Thank you both. We're now going to questions. Please put your questions into the chat box and we will address them. Our first question is for Stacy. How do you balance motherhood with moving forward in your career?
Just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I can't do this with all of you because not all of you are on video, but if I was talking to my children right now, I would be looking into my eyes. I'm not sure if you caught, but it's a constant balancing act, that's for sure. It's not always equally weighted. I don't know if you caught my son walk in during this panel, but he came into the room because I'm working from his desk at the moment. So balance is an interesting word. I think I've always lived in a family where there's been strong female representation and strong women workers who have contributed not only at home, but also in the workplace. So I've had amazing role models, and that's always furthered me in my career. So at home, I want to represent that as well for my family and my children. It's not always easy to balance, but not only with the support of a husband, my children as well, and then the amazing colleagues that I work with that are understanding, whether it's Peter Rennie, who is my supervisor, who is always supportive of if I need to run out to pick up my kids early when they have early dismissals, and then hop online for a meeting remote. Very understanding of that. Whether it's me having a call with a colleague to try and work through any particular issues while I'm in the car with my kids. I think individually you need to be able to juggle more so than balance, because you're always attentive to the needs, whether it's of the organization or of the family. So for me, it's my comfort zone. I like to be busy. If I'm not busy, I get anxious. So it's just my personality. And being a mother is kind of cool. And when you're working in teams, you have various tricks up your sleeve to try and get people engaged, that you can try out, whether it be at home or, on the flip side at work. So it's complementary in a lot of ways. My kids love to support our Ondeck Canada soccer team. They're a great cheer squad. We have a lot of fun doing that, and I'm looking forward to when we can do that again. I really see Ondeck as part of my larger family, and so not really a balance. It's more of a juggling act, I would say.
Okay. Thanks, Stacy. So we have another question. This is for our female panelists. The question is, how does Ondeck compares to other companies for which they've worked in providing support to our female team members? Maria, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you please repeat the question?
How is Ondeck compared to other companies in terms of providing support to female team members?
So I don't have a point of comparison in this case because Ondeck has been my only company here in the US. I used to work for another one in Colombia. But just in general, they have been great to me, great to just diversity in general, always trying to have everyone into account at the same level. No, just in general have been great, basically. So I have nothing to complain about that.
Okay. Liz or Stacy, do you want to chime in?
I'll give Liz the
Hi.
opportunity.
Thank you, Stacy. So interestingly, my situation is the same as Maria. Ondeck is my only employer in the US. So apparently Ondeck has lots of activities and policies to have women like largely included in all those events, and to make sure that work-life balance of women are kind of being able to maintain at Ondeck. And I still remember, actually starting from my first year on that, we have different celebrations of Women's Month or Women's Day every year. Starting from taking group photos to like happy hours to this year's panel. So lots of things to expect in the coming years.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
I have a few points of comparison. So even though I've been with Ondeck/Evelocity for 7+ years, I've worked in a number of other organizations. I'd say Ondeck is the most forward-thinking, more supportive. We allow for the opportunities of women more so than the other environments, whether it's as Rob and had mentioned previously, really listening and trying to understand what everyone around the table is trying to bring. Everyone has unique perspectives. What you're hearing may not be what you're internalizing, and really trying to work through that as a group and as a team so that you're communicating effectively and trying to get the message out that you want. So I think we try hard. We don't always succeed, but I think the intention is to try and be as clear as we possibly can, be as supportive as we possibly can, for the benefit of our customers. And we're certainly a strong team, and we recognize we're not always perfect, that we have imperfections, but we certainly strive to work through those imperfections together, and allow for more presence for all of our team members to speak up and contribute to the successes of the organization collectively.
Okay, thank you all. As mentioned, please put any questions in the box and we will ask them to our panelists. We have a question for Maria. Can you give an example of a challenge you faced as a woman rising through the ranks of a male-dominated industry that you handled successfully, and how would you have handled differently given the knowledge and experience you have today?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so successfully, in sales, we face rejections and failures every single day. This is simply part of our role. So this is something that I understood from the beginning. However, I'm a woman. I am emotional. I cry almost every day. But in this job, I have learned how to face rejection. I have learned how to be a loser, basically, just to lose, not be ashamed of that, to take personally, and especially keep moving to the next opportunity fast, not feeling sorry about myself when I spent a lot of time and energy with a prospect. If I lose it, it's fine. There are a lot more waiting for me, basically. So the key is just to learn from these experiences and improve the approach and keep moving forward. And one thing that I would have handled differently is that I used to prioritize my job over my health, my friends, my family. And I used to believe that I needed to work many hours just to be successful. And based on my own experience, based on these 5 years of sales career, I have learned that in order to find success, it is more important to work harder on yourself than you do solely on your job. Because I find that when you have healthy habits like meditation, exercise, when you have a good relationship with your family, your friends, you have a balance between your job and your personal life, you produce amazing results at your job. So that was something that I would have handled it differently in the beginning, but that with my experience I learned, and now is something that I just do almost every day. Keep that in mind almost every day.
Okay. Thanks, Maria. So I have a question for Liz. What are examples of, excuse me, what are examples of ways you've advocated for yourself at work and how did you benefit?
Got it. Thank you for the question, Camille. And what are the examples of ways? I would say I at the beginning of my career, pretty much take Sheryl Sandberg as my role model because she's very successful in the technology industry, and I literally learned a lot. Was inspired a lot by her book Leaning. So the first thing I would say is be confident and positive about self. If you face a challenge, whether it's a new project, new model, or new position, believe in yourself and take it, face it. If you need help, then just ask for help. I think everyone, to some extent, will face obstacles, and it's very important to know where you can find the resources to help you to go through. And the second thing I would say is communication and ask for feedback. Scott previously mentioned that one-on-one is a very good opportunity for the team members to talk about the some of the questions or situations they face. And I totally agree with that. I think one-on-one is a very good chance for you to communicate with your manager about your strengths and weaknesses and to understand like future developments within the team and future plans of the team. And the third thing I would say is especially for female workers in the technology industry, just be the authentic yourself at work. Like at Ondeck, we're one team, and all those like performance metrics, accountability, and responsibility will not differ by gender. So be confident and be yourself.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. So we have a question for the entire panel. Is there any advice or suggestions you'd provide to Ondeck's leadership team on things we can do to better support you and Ondeck's diversity initiatives?
I guess I could start since nobody else is. Actually, I find that this company is very supportive. I've learned myself a lot here on being an advocate for women. Whenever I'm concerned about, we're only recruiting certain demographics of people, I've been able to bring them up to management. They've been very, very responsive. Whenever I've had concerns from some of my employees, I feel real comfortable bringing that up to upper management to make sure that we're getting those situations handled. So Ondeck actually has a lot of support. And I would say, we just need to keep making sure that we keep our eye on the ball, that we're really trying to create a diverse, creative workforce, that the company benefits from that. And so we need to pay due diligence and due time and those sorts of things to making sure that we stay that way.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott, if I could come in on this, Camille.
Go ahead.
I actually think, look, I'm back, I'm just reflecting on the previous question, like how well does Ondeck rank in, supporting women and kind of some of these issues. I think in my experience, I think it ranks very well. Now, I think other companies have also come a long way in the last 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, one of the things that's really interesting to me is even just think about our situation right now, right? We're all working from home. The barriers between your personal life and your work life are coming down, which is, and I don't think that's changing. That moving forwards, it's gonna become more kind of more recognized that those barriers need to come down. And I think what Ondeck is good at, and I think it's realizing, a lot of companies are realizing, is that you have to deal with the individual as a whole, and whether you're a woman, a male, whatever your persuasion, like you're individuals, you're a person, and people come with complexities in their life, in their personal life, in their situation, in their financial situation, in all sorts of things. And it's just the company needs to understand this and meet you halfway, or even more than halfway, and allow for that. So allow for your personality and your issues and what's going on in your private and personal life, which used to be very separated from work life, to what Maria is saying around, I used to have my professional life and then that's going out the window. And we have to recognize that, because then we have employees and individuals who are happier, they're more authentic, they're more true. And, and yes, all of a sudden the company is having to deal with other issues that it didn't have to before. But hey, that's life, and I think if we can do that, I don't think we're all the way there, but I think we're much more open to that. And my goodness, if this example in these last few days and these last few weeks is not a good example of that, nothing is, right? So I don't think it's going back to anything different now. Can we be better at that? Definitely. I think there's still an issue at the leadership level or management level. Again, it's not about not listening to women or not having their voices. It's just the way we think around how we make decisions is still very biased, I think, or orientated towards an analytical only approach that says, well, here's the numbers, or here's the impact on the bottom line, or here's, and it's kind of biased exclusively to that, answer, without recognizing that actually there's a broader perspective to that you know, there's other non-financial issues, or there's other, you know, there's a broader point of view, which I think women are very good at bringing that perspective. And to me, as part of the leadership team and the management team, that's the bit I don't see as yet, you know, kind of properly attuned to. But I think we'll get there. Like, I hope we get there. I think there's a willingness. We just have to, you know, work on that. Is my perspective.
Thanks, Rob. That's really insightful. Do any of our other panelists want to comment?
In my case, I will just say that it is great what these infinity groups are doing. So keep supporting this type of groups, of panels, so people can get to know a little bit more of our opinions, our point of views. That Amir Smith, he had affinity group also about Black at Ondeck, and he was just sharing all of that information with the entire. So this is something that we need to promote, and it's also something that is gonna unite our employees on Ondeck, get to know each other a little bit more, and that's how we improve our culture and the diversity. So supporting this type of activities, it's just great.
Well, thanks, Maria. We're at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to thank all of our panelists, our fearless women and ally, for sharing their perspectives and their insights. And thank you all for joining our panel. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Be well.
Thank you.
Next one in person, hopefully.
Thanks, everyone.